Salutations, respected viewers. I'm George from Ireland, and I'm outside the location of the original Scotland Yard. So why is it called Scotland Yard? Well, until 1603, Scotland and England had separate monarchs. They were separate states, had been for centuries, and were often hostile to each other, often at war against each other. But anyway, Scotland had an embassy in London, just as England and Wales had an embassy in Edinburgh. So the Scottish embassy was around here, and the backyard of it, where they kept their horses and so on, was known as Scotland Yard. Obviously, 1603, then James the Sixth, King of Scots, became James I of England. So there was a single monarchy, and 1707 was the Act of Union. The two parliaments merged, but the area continued to be known as Scotland Yard. So there had been parish constables for centuries. So parish is an area of land around a church, a square mile, a few square miles, depending if it's urban or rural, and that was the smallest unit of local government. So people had to pay a tax to the parish, and they would hire a constable. So it was very badly paid, and really he was a night watchman. He'd have some sort of guard box to sit in, try and get the draft out, don't make it too comfortable, might fall asleep. And his job was really just to raise the alarm. And there'd be hue and cry. I see someone breaking into a house, I see an assault on the street, might have a handbell or something like that, or eventually a whistle, or indeed there was a fire. And possibly try and apprehend the suspects, but really just rouse every able-bodied man to do what he could. And it was abysmally paid, but they sometimes did fall asleep. So you couldn't find a fit young man to do it. Usually it's someone well into decrepitude who was doing it, some elderly chap who was not physically able. And so some boisterous youths, when they were roistering, found it fun to go along to a guard box at night and push it over, especially if they knew the guy had fallen asleep inside. So weren't much use, but crime was increasing a lot. By 1800, the population of London was 1 million people. By some estimates, it was the largest city in the world. Now, in a very small community, everyone knows everyone by face. And you had to see someone commit a crime, you had to catch them red-handed, you had to arrest them with the stolen object, whatever it was. There was no fingerprint evidence until Inspector Henry, invented it in the late 19th century, really just relied on testimony from eyewitnesses and so on, confessions, or sometimes incriminating artifacts. So London was so big, people didn't know each other by face. You could just disappear into the crowd. It's relatively anonymous. And the government was disturbed by the rising crime. The parish constable system was not working. And the parishes, they were all cheek by jowl. You didn't really know where the boundaries of parishes were. So you could move from one parish to another all the time, just walk down the street. So that system was breaking down. Moreover, the French Revolution, 1789, revolutionary groups were very active here. Some were plotting to overthrow the state. So it was decided that they needed something different. So should there be a police force introduced here? Well, ancient Rome had a police force of kinds. Some of the German states had them for a long time. France had one for a long time. But there was a parliamentary commission made to investigate it. And they just said that a police force was incompatible with a free society because it could be misused by the monarchy, for example, to bulldoze parliament. It would deprive people of their civil liberties. They would search without warrants, or they'd arrest people willy-nilly, and they'd beat up suspects, and they'd plant evidence. And no, we can't have these petty tyrants bossing us around. There would be a blue plague of locusts. Anyway, eventually Parliament changed its mind, and they established the Metropolitan Police Force, or the police of the metropolis, to give it its proper name. But it was for London only. London was thought to be a special case, not for the rest of the country. In Ireland, we already had the Peace Preservation Force, which was eventually turned into the Royal Irish Constabulary, or the police. Anyway, so Scotland Yard was set up when the Metropolitan Police Force was set up, and this was their headquarters. And they already had Bow Street runners. Bow Street is some distance to the west of here. Anyway, what else? They were also patrolling on boats, occasionally on horseback, and they had to be very respectable citizens. They had to be reasonably agile and strong. Had to have a height requirement to overawe would-be miscreants. And just by their sober and respectable lifestyle, they were to inspire admiration amongst the public. That was the idea. It was the height requirements they got rid of a long time ago. There were no police women till about 1919. So we known as PC, police officer, and all the rest of it. So anyway, the citizen in the uniform not have additional powers. Of course, there were citizens' arrests. I also only arrested back then. But eventually, they were granted more and more powers and things like that to get where we are now. But there were many police stations founded all over London, and eventually the whole idea of police was extended throughout the United Kingdom. The blue lamp on top of a police station, often flying a flag. They often flew the Union flag. Now in Northern Ireland, when the RUC was turned into the Police Service of Northern Ireland in 2001, they changed that. They're no longer flying the Union flag there. What else about this? So Scotland Yard then became known as the headquarters of the CID, or Criminal Investigation Department. That was to deal with organised crime, not pickpockets, not lost children, not I'm just trying to think, vandalism, but people who are professional criminals who carefully conspire to carry out large-scale heists, contract murders, things like that, or even serial killers. So that's what they were best known for. And then there were the detectives out of uniform. The idea is Sherlock Holmes has worked one of these. Of course, he's a fictitious character. Anything else? Well, then the flying squad came in after the First World War, as in because London's divided into divisions for the purpose of policing, as in geographical areas. The police are supposed to operate within the geographical area. Now, a police officer can arrest someone anywhere in London, or indeed anywhere in the United Kingdom. A police officer from Scotland can arrest somebody here. A police officer from London can arrest somebody in Northern Ireland. It doesn't matter. But they generally, even within London, operate within their geographical area. But by the end of the First World War, there was an upswing in organised crime, partly a lot of demobilised ex-soldiers. The place was awash in guns. The Firearms Act hadn't come in. So the flying squad was there to tackle that, to tackle the spate of armed robberies. And in Cockney rhyming slang, the flying squad became known as Sweeney Todd, or just the Sweeney. So this is how Cockney rhyming slang works. It was invented by criminals in the mid-19th century to prevent the police understand what they're saying. You take your word, and then you can think of a two-word phrase that rhymes with it, and then you use just simply the first word to indicate the word you actually mean, even though the first word of the two-word phrase doesn't rhyme with the word you intend. Confused? Good. That's the whole idea. So flying squad rhymes with Sweeney Todd. We're not going to say Todd because that's too obviously rhyming with squad. We'll say Sweeney, the Sweeney, as in Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. That horror play about this fictional 18th century barber who used to cut the throats of the men he was shaving, and then the woman next door would turn them into pies. Okay, so anything else about the flying squad? Well, you can see the Sweeney, a series in the 1970s about the flying squad in London. All right, so I don't know if the flying squad exists as such anymore. There was certainly the mobile patrol group in the early 90s doing the same thing, but also tackling raves, illegal raves. Is the height of ecstasy when criminal gangs would take over a derelict building, a disused warehouse, something, organise a rave, be selling ecstasy tablets, and then you've got thousands of youngsters and these criminals, and then they're creating an awful lot of noise and mess, irritating the residents. How are you going to clear them out? And because people were paying cash and the gangsters were getting, and no credit cards, cash only, getting tens of thousands of pounds, they had to guard it in case another armed gang came to rob it. All right, so that is enough about Scotland Yard.